Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jay, and today I have a really yummy, really easy Thanksgiving dessert recipe for you. This recipe is very special to me. It reminds me of my mom, and it reminds me of a time when my entire immediate family still lived together, my parents and my siblings and I, before we all kind of ventured out and started our own lives and families and whatnot. My mom has been making these cookies for us for years, both for Thanksgiving, and then also we have them at Christmas time too, because we don't want to enjoy them just once a year. So they're really more of a holiday cookie, but I'm putting them out before Thanksgiving because I think they're just the perfect Thanksgiving dessert. And this would be something really great to bring if you've been tasked with bringing a dessert to Thanksgiving, or work, or a holiday party, or what have you. They're really, really yummy and really easy, and they only have a few ingredients. So let's go ahead and get started on these cookies. And today we are making a homemade pumpkin cookie with a brown sugar frosting. They are so good, you guys. Now, I'm not feeling very well today, so I am cheating a little bit. We're gonna use store-bought canned pumpkin and store-bought pumpkin pie spice. And then there is one ingredient in these cookies that I know my homesteading followers are not going to enjoy, and that is Crisco shortening. However, they're a holiday treat. It's not something you're eating all the time. I also don't love Crisco. You could substitute butter for these, but unless you just really don't have it in you to use Crisco, please use Crisco, because it helps the cookie keep its really nice, yummy, dense shape. If you use butter, they spread really bad. The Crisco really helps them keep their shape. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the dry ingredients together in a small bowl. You wanna add 4 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of baking soda, and 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice. I did ask my mom first if it was okay that I share this recipe on my channel, and she said yes, because although she cannot remember where she found it, it was somebody else's recipe. She did not develop this recipe. It's not a family recipe. It just so happens that it feels like a family recipe for me, because I've got so many fond memories attached to it, but she did not develop it, and it didn't come from any family members, so I got the green light to share it with you. You just want to kind of combine those dry ingredients, and then we're going to set those aside. To a large bowl, you want to add 2 cups of sugar. The recipe says white granulated sugar, which is what I'm using. If you have a different type of sugar that you enjoy using, feel free to substitute with that. However, I would not use brown sugar as a substitute in the cookie, because the frosting is brown sugar, and that's going to end up being a lot of brown sugar. So I don't recommend doing that if you can help it. The recipe says 2 cups of canned pumpkin, and 1 15-ounce can is not quite 2 cups. It's like 1.87 cups or something like that. But I hate opening a second can of pumpkin to just use a few spoonfuls. So in the past, I've tried using just 1 can of pumpkin, and it works out fine. So that's what I'm gonna do here, because I don't wanna open up another can of pumpkin. With me not feeling well today, I just really wanted some kind of baked good. The house will smell really nice. It gets me up off the couch and moving. And like I've been saying, these cookies are so feel good for me that it's really nice. I'm not really well versed in shortening and the different types of shortening. I've always just used Crisco. So if there is another type of shortening out there, obviously not butter, like I said, because butter's a lot softer than shortening, leave it down in the comments for me. I'd really like to know, because I don't really love using Crisco either, but I really want these cookies to turn out the way that I have, expected them to turn out. And that's why I always use it. I literally buy Crisco and use it 2 times a year, both times to make these cookies. So yeah, if there's an alternative to shortening, let me rephrase. If there's a substitute, an alternative to Crisco that is maybe a bit healthier, more wholesome ingredients, let me know. I wonder, lard, right? I think lard is a substitute for shortening, I'm pretty sure. So maybe I could buy that somewhere here locally, just when I'm wanting to make these cookies, and use that as a substitute to Crisco. I'm not sure. I should probably look into that. You want 2 cups of the shortening. The last ingredient is 2 eggs. And then you could use a stand mixer. You could also just use like a wooden spoon, but the Crisco can be kind of a bear to try and mix. So I am gonna use my hand mixer, and you wanna cream together the sugar and all your wet ingredients. All right, you're not really looking for light and fluffy here like you usually are when you're creaming together like butter and sugar, because that's not gonna happen here. You're just wanting to get those wet ingredients combined. And then usually I do half of the dry ingredients, mix those together, and then add the other half, and that usually works out pretty well. You know, I forgot to add salt. I think you want like about a teaspoon of salt. Okay, and then let's add in the other half. Oh, and I also forgot to add in a splash of vanilla. It actually doesn't, the recipe doesn't call for it, but because there's vanilla in the frosting, but I add vanilla to everything. All right, perfect. And because we've got the shortening in there, our dough is really, like, it's very stiff and dense, I suppose is a good way to put it. And your cookies are going to be as well. And they're so good, trust me. I remember the very first time I made these. I was living in Alaska, and I had just ventured out on my own. I was so excited to make my mom's cookies, and I used butter instead of Crisco, not understanding the difference. And I opened up the oven so excited, and they were these, like, they were huge. They had spread out and were like this big. And I was like, what is this? I miss my mom. I will never forget that. Yeah, definitely, if you're going to use butter, if you have your heart set on using butter and you do not want to use Crisco, make this dough, put it in the freezer. You want this dough to be so cold when you put it in the oven. That's your best bet, and even then you're gonna have some spread. There's just no getting around it because there's so much shortening in here, 2 cups, that if you sub that out for 2 cups of butter, so much of your ratio is butter that they're gonna spread. There's absolutely no getting around it. So our dough is all done, and it's just a simple 350. You are dropping these cookies onto an ungreased cookie sheet. Again, because we're trying to prevent spread. If you put these cookies on a greased cookie sheet, you're just creating an easier opportunity for them to spread. So ungreased cookie sheet. And usually I just do, let me see, it's a very sticky dough, so it's gonna be kind of tough. Probably something like that maybe. That actually looks a little big to me. We're going with it. This can just be a sheet of big ones. It's really cute because these do vary in size. It's difficult to get them super consistent. And us as kids, we'd always leave the really big ones for my dad. That's another fond memory that I have of these. Another fond memory that I have is there's 3 of us children. I have a brother and a sister, and we all love these cookies, all 3 of us. And my mom would make them and leave them on a big cookie sheet in the oven. Like, that's where they would just be stored. And we were not allowed to just go get cookies whenever we wanted. We had to, like, ask and have permission to eat one. And so, of course, being children, we didn't want to do that. And so the 3 of us would take turns stealing one off of the cookie sheet in the oven, and then we'd arrange the rest of the cookies to kind of make it not so obvious that we took a cookie until, so, you know, if 3 kids doing that 2 or 3 times, you're going to get to the point where it's quite obvious that some cookies have been stolen. And then my mom would yell at us, but I'm sure that she was, you know, smiling on the inside because, you know, you can't be mad at naughty children who just want to eat holiday cookies, you know. I look back on it fondly. I'm sure my mom does too. Trying not to get too carried away. We don't want these to be too big. I mean, I guess it really doesn't matter, but I want to be able to have, you know, more cookies, not necessarily bigger cookies. And the measurements that I gave you makes a lot. At least I can't give you a number, but in my memory, I remember there always being a lot. I only make them this time of the year, so I kind of forget. Okay, this is gonna take like probably 4 cookie sheets to get all of this loaded up, maybe even more. So I'm gonna go ahead and tray all of these up, and then I'll show you what they look like when we get our first batch out. I'm trying to remember how long I baked them for. Thinking maybe, I'll probably check them at 10 minutes and see how they're doing, because again, this is a very dense cookie. So I think probably 10 minutes I'll check and see what they're looking like. All right, you guys, our cookies are almost done. I have my last batch in there right now. Let me find a really pretty one. So this is what they end up looking like. They're very dense. I will warn you, this is a very cakey cookie. I love them though. I like them that way. And so now you can kind of understand what I'm saying. Look at how tall that cookie is. It's a very tall cookie. And if you had used butter, it would have completely spread. And because it's a cakey cookie, it would have been, you can't do anything with it. Like if you try to pick it up, it just breaks in half. But this is a very sturdy, very dense cookie. So I'm gonna, I haven't frosted them yet, obviously, but the inside is very soft, but the outside has a little bit of a crunch to it. This is I mean, these turned out absolutely perfect. Like I said, I have my last batch in the oven right now. We can start thinking about the frosting, but I want to warn you, don't start the frosting too soon. I always wait until either they're all done or, like I said, there's one more pan in the oven. That's fine. Because you want your cookies to be cool, and I've got plenty of them over here that I can be working on while those are cooling. Because if you try to put this frosting on a hot cookie, it's just going to run right off. It's not going to work. In this bowl, I have 6 tablespoons of butter melted. And since most of my ingredients aren't great quality, I'm at least going to splurge and use my really nice butter. This is my organic European butter from Azure Standard. To that melted butter, we're going to add 2 cups of confectioner's sugar. You really want to try to be exact with this because this frosting can be a pain in the neck. You really want to get the right texture because if it's too wet, it's not going to dry properly, and if it's too dry, you're not going to be able to spread it properly. So this recipe can be kind of a pain in the neck, but trust me, it's worth the effort. It's so good. And actually, you know, I think I'd recommend adding the brown sugar first because it would dissolve better in the butter. It's probably what I should have done, but that's okay, it'll work out. And then we're going to add 1 cup of brown sugar. You can use light or dark. I've used both. I think I prefer light just because dark is just such a strong flavor. But if you're into that, go for it. You want to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And then I start with 6, it says teaspoons, but I really think it's tablespoons. I'm waiting for my mom to text me back, but I don't think she's going to. She's at work. I have teaspoons written in my recipe book. Oh, she did get back to me. It is teaspoons. I really remember it being tablespoons. All right, we're going to start with 6 teaspoons of milk and then add more if we feel like we need it. Milk is really the place where you can try and get your consistency just right. Because if you add too much, then you have to add more powdered sugar. And once you start playing the powdered sugar game, you're done for. That's the worst. I hate doing that. Oh, I hate that so much. All right, and I don't know how much milk I put in there because I took cookies out in between. So let's just start mixing it together and see what consistency we end up with. Once you start making it, you kind of have to move fast because this is a frosting that hardens. And you want that. I want that. I love when a cookie has a frosting on it that hardens because then you're in a position to stack them and you can take a large quantity of them places and it's just really convenient. So I like that a lot, but you really do. And already I've waited too long talking and you know, doing other things because my butter is not melted anymore. So I'm in kind of a pickle here, but that's okay because I could always just stick this in the microwave for a couple seconds and get everything softened back up again. But either way, I already can tell that I'm going to have to add more milk. I'm going to add 3 more teaspoons because this isn't resembling a frosting at all right now. But don't get crazy because if you have a frosting that looks really dry, you're thinking, my goodness, I need to add a bunch of milk. You really don't need to add as much as you think. And then again, if you end up with a frosting that's too runny, you really don't want that. I'd much rather add milk a little at a time than have to go back in and add more powdered sugar. Like I said, I hate doing that. I hate it so much. Okay, see, look at how that changed with just the addition of 3 teaspoons of milk. It's totally different consistency with just that change. We're almost there. I think maybe 1 more teaspoon of milk, because right now, although it definitely is a frosting now, it still would be, you destroy the cookie trying to spread that. So I'm gonna add 1 more teaspoon of milk. Might have to add a second, but I'm not going to just assume that. My mom texted me and said that she usually does 8 to 10 teaspoons of milk, and we were starting around 6, so I'm not surprised that I needed to add a few more. Oh yeah, that is looking really good. Perhaps another splash of milk, but this is definitely more along the lines of the consistency you're looking for, because this will harden into a beautiful frosting. And I'm telling you right now, you guys, you might get those cookies out of the oven and try one and think, wow, these are really good just the way they are. They are, it's true. They're such tasty cookies. Do not skip the frosting. Please, 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 please make the brown sugar frosting, because it takes the cookie from good to spectacular. I'm talking, if we're talking a last meal situation and I get to have a dessert with my last meal, it's gonna be these cookies. These are my absolute favorite cookies. And then I'm really mixing this hard because the brown sugar, I really needed to mix it in with the melted butter. That would have helped it dissolve better, so there are some chunks in here. So I'm just going through and mixing it really well to try and get any brown sugar clumps broken up and distributed throughout my frosting. That looks really good. I'm going to add just a splash, like the smallest little drop, and then it'll be perfect. Because you do want to be able to spread it on the cookie. They are dense, but they're not bulletproof, so you really need to be able to spread the frosting on the cookie. All right, let's head over to our cookies and start frosting. So let's see what we're working with here. We have 2, 4, 6, 8. We ended up with, 44 cookies. We ended up with 44 cookies from just that batch of dough that I showed you. That's quite a few cookies from just one batch. So if you decide to double it, beware. You're gonna have like almost 100 cookies. And so you want to be somewhat conservative, because I have run out of frosting before, but also you want people to enjoy each cookie, you know? So you'll find that balance the more you do it. So there you go. And I just kind of roughly smooth it around the cookie. You don't want it to be perfect, because that's what adds to the rusticness of the cookie. And look, there's a brown sugar chunk. Look at how delicious that looks. Oh, these cookies are so good, if I haven't already said it enough. This is a dad cookie. This is a cookie we'd say for our dad, because it's the size of the palm of my hand. So that's one that us kids would reserve for him. And we always loved giving them to him too. Like, he'd come home from work and we'd be like, we saved this one for you, Dad. Such fun memories. You really take those times for granted and you don't even know it until you look back on it and wish you had appreciated them in the moment. I'm only, 6 cookies in, and already my frosting is starting to harden up and get difficult to spread. So every few minutes, just give it a really good stir to keep it from sitting stagnant and hardening. You guys, we are all done frosting our cookies, and can you tell I've done this before? I got through all of those cookies and have enough. I could scrape up 1 more cookie's worth of frosting if I really had to out of here. I definitely have gotten pretty good at it, so let's try one. Here I've got a delicious brown sugar frosted pumpkin cookie. So good. These are literally what my childhood dreams are made of. So good. These are so good. There are 2 more tips that I want to give you. The first one I'm thinking of right now as I'm eating this. When you make your frosting, I wish I had done it properly so that you would have seen it. Please dissolve your brown sugar in your melted butter first. That's your number 1 step. I'm pretty sure that actually is how you're, like, I'm pretty sure that's written in the directions, but I just don't have the written directions. I just have the ingredients written down. But if you don't, the brown sugar is not going to properly dissolve into the frosting, and your frosting is going to be very gritty. And this is. As I'm chewing it, I can hear myself chewing the brown sugar granules because they did not properly dissolve, which is fine. It's not that big of a deal. It still tastes really good. It's just a texture thing. But, you know, especially if you're going to bring these somewhere, please dissolve the brown sugar in the melted butter. It'll give you a smoother consistency to your frosting. The second tip that I wanted to mention is that when you pull the cookies out of the oven, immediately take them off of the cookie sheet. These cookies are very dense. They hold up really well. It's not like one of those chocolate chip cookies where if it's too soft and you try to move it too soon, it breaks. These are really, really sturdy. They're fine, but you want to stop the bottom of the cookie from cooking any further, from baking any further. So have a spatula ready. As soon as you get them out of the oven, start moving them off of the pan onto wherever you're going to keep them. In my case, I've got my little baking racks over here, as you saw. So yeah, that recipe made approximately 44 cookies. Could have more, could have less, depending on the size that you make them. They are a delicious, very family-friendly holiday dessert. Perfect if you need to bring a dessert to Thanksgiving. Like I said, we also have them at Christmas time. Remember that if you are going to substitute with butter, please, please put your dough in the freezer and have it be like rock solid cold when you put those cookies in the oven. That's really your best bet for keeping that dough from spreading, and even then it's still going to spread. The shortening is really important. If there's some alternative that I'm not aware of, please let me know down in the comments. But you guys, this is my favorite holiday dessert. I like these more than pumpkin pie. I'm talking my favorite holiday dessert, and I'm so glad that I finally got to share these with you. So you guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you give this recipe a chance. Let me know in the comments if you do and what your thoughts are. You guys, be blessed. Have a great day. Bye.